Hey there, gang. Welcome back to Weird Wednesdays. TattooedBiker here with you. And tonight I have something disturbing and truly bizarre in store for you. In this episode, I'll be delving into the mysterious realm of unidentified creatures and cryptids. I've received two bone-chilling viewer accounts, straight from those who have encountered these enigmatic beings. Brace yourselves for some true scares, and just enjoy the ride as we dive deep into these two terrifying encounters. Number 1. Dear Tattooed Biker, I've been a doctor going on 10 years now, and I've come across cases which would stun the average person. It's not often I'm stumped on a certain case, but once it had to happen. I was working the night shift, and that's when most activity happens. Busy nights like this kind of makes you wish you'd chosen a different profession, but when you got a big caring heart like mine, you just can't help it. As I was making my rounds on the east wing, a few nurses brought in a man who looked unconscious and covered in blood. No pulse and pupils were dilated. I could have called it right then and there, but for whatever reason, I knew he wasn't completely deceased. I checked all the vitals and nothing, but the thing was, this man had begun to twitch, was cold to the touch, and skin was pale as plain paper. You would swear he was dead, but it seemed a little premature to just declare him. When I opened his mouth, I got the shock of my life. Immediately, I backed up and had my nurses take him to a private room immediately. I began to hyperventilate at the sight I had just seen and shook my head as I leaned on the wall for a few seconds, trying to collect my thoughts in order. After calming down, I went to the private room and I instructed the nurses to strap him down. And they just looked at me like I was crazy, since this man, half-dead man, seemed like he could barely move, and they questioned why. As they did so, I asked one of the nurses to leave, leaving me with the senior nurse, who I've been working with for some time now. I went and slid the door and locked it, as my nurse just watched. I looked at her, and I could tell she could see the fear in my face, and she asked, "What's wrong with you? I haven't seen you this shaken up since your first day." I looked at her and smirked nervously as I walked up to the man, opening his mouth and shone my hand light inside. I looked at her and replied, "What do you see here, What does that look like to you?" She leans in, looking inside the man's mouth, unimpressed for a few seconds, and then her eyes suddenly widen. "What the hell? Are those real?" She whispers as I begin to venture his gum lines, inspecting all the teeth he had, and I pulled back and stay on the chair behind me as she started to hyperventilate herself. "Those can't be real. Like maybe cosmetic surgery or something, right?" I shook my head, disagreeing with her statement. The gum line isn't torn and doesn't look to be any tampering. Now, if I'm not mistaken, humans don't have teeth like that, and they definitely don't have 4 of them on the canine teeth. What I think we have here is something that we aren't supposed to have in our hospital. She looks at me with wide eyes, with her hands on her heart, holding a cross. "You don't think, is that possible?" I shook my head. "I don't know, honestly. I think what we have here is the impossible. I don't even want to say it, but I think we have a vampire in our hospital." We sat in silence for a few minutes, wondering what to do next as this man tossed slightly, still strapped down and not sure about the lore of vampires having strength or if I watched too many horror movies. Stumped at what to do next, I felt it was my duty to protect the people in the ER, and I decided to take this man or thing to a safer location. Paranoia hit me like a ton of bricks as I stood over this thing in front of me. I instructed the nurse to open the door as I began to wheel him out of the room before putting a blanket over his entire body and hiding his face, which seemed pretty much human. I managed to wheel him past a few doors without warning, I was approached by these men in suits and sunglasses, looking like government officials. They stopped the gurney and held their hands out, stopping me from going any further. They took the man down the hallway as one official looked me up and down, and without a word just walked away like nothing had happened. I managed to follow them back to the entrance, and they seemed to be loading the man into the back of a black van, followed by several other black cars, which I thought was strange. They drove off as quickly as they came, and then just like that, they were gone. Me and my nurse never mentioned the incident to anyone because of the fear of these black suits coming back to silence us, but it never happened. I'm not sure what was going on, but whatever it was, I was just glad it's happening far away from my hospital. I'm a believer in many things, but this one's a new one for me. There are times when I can't sleep, knowing there's a whole new world out there, which I can't even comprehend. Maybe I don't want to know what's really going on for the sake of what's left of my innocence. But they're out there, and I know that now. The question is, are we really safe? Signed, Don. Number 2. Hi, Biker. My name is Mary, and I'm not even sure where to begin, but after stumbling upon articles about the Conewago Phantom, I had to tell somebody about what I've seen. The experience that my mom and I had was terrifying, and I'm getting goosebumps just thinking of the possibility that what we saw was actually real. We've had a lot of experiences with the paranormal, but this one takes the cake. I've since moved away from York, but we're planning to move back to Pennsylvania, which led me to research hauntings and cryptid sightings in the area. When I saw the Conewago Phantom on Google, the pictures alone almost made my stomach drop, but when I read the descriptions, down to the almost humanoid crying, I'm still kind of in shock. It's hard to pinpoint an exact date, but I believe it was summertime in 2010. There were 2 separate instances that neither of us had thought were tied together. We were living in Mount Wolf at the time, right by the Caldorus furnace, which there's a whole other story about the woman in white for maybe another time. Behind our house were woods, and it wasn't uncommon for us to hear foxes or owls or any other animal making noises out there. But there was one night that my mom had called me outside to listen to what she described as a sad and lonely wailing. We researched endlessly about what could have possibly made the sound, but we always fell short, and it would fade in and out before eventually lingering away. I hadn't thought much on it, considering that the actual sighting was the forefront of my memories there, but reading that description, it makes so much more sense. It was a little bit after this, when my mom and I were coming home from running errands, when we slowed to a stop, and it was nighttime. We always liked to watch for deer on the horizon of the fields. I was in the passenger seat trying to see out my mom's window, and that's when I saw this black form by the back window. I don't even remember what I said or did to get her to look back, but she did. She then turned forward, slammed on the gas, and wouldn't even talk to me about it until we got home and in the house. She said that when she turned to look at it, it stood up, and wing-like appendages spanned out from its back. We both agreed that it was massive. I'd say 9 to 10 feet tall. I don't recall seeing any red eyes, but it all just happened so fast. Personally, I'm more apt to be spooked out by the paranormal, where my mom is more curious. But whatever this thing was enough to terrify even her. She wanted to go back out to investigate, but I was too afraid to go, and she didn't want to go alone. The next day, when we returned in the daylight to see if maybe there was a tree or a mailbox or anything that could have been what we saw, but we couldn't find any. Up until now, I've jokingly referred to it as my Mothman experience, despite the uneasy undertones. I had no idea this creature even existed. I've told the story to so many, but I think it's hard for them to really grasp what actually happened. To them, I'm sure it just sounds like a spooky ghost story. I've been dying to find an actual explanation to this, and I think that I finally did. My grandmother had a similar experience, but she was living in Edgewood, Maryland at the time. She described it as exactly the same, though. A massive, black, winged creature lingering near her car. She told us at the time she thought it was a fallen angel. It's all just been very surreal, and I didn't think I would ever get answers to what we saw, and it's haunted me to this very day. I'm still unsure whether or not this discovery has eased my mind or frightened me even more. But I'd love to talk more about this sometime. All the best, signed Mary. And there it is. All I have for you tonight. I hope you enjoyed hearing these eerie tales. If you have a story of your own, I'd love to hear it. So let me know in the comments if you've ever encountered something like this. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It's completely free and it really helps out the channel. So until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, stay safe, and I'll be seeing you a little later on. Biker.